Alan can't hold a candle, I think, to his creator himself. No more than could Huckleberry Finn himself have lighted out for territories any wilder than the fictional frontier that Mark has been scouting and pioneering in Insect Dreams, The Education of Arnold Hitler, and now Golem Song. Abandon all expectations, ye who enter here. That's what the bunting should read over Mark's titles. I certainly hope all of you have abandoned your own expectations of our author events when you came here tonight. For in celebration of a novel chock-a-block with twists, not the same as a twisted novel, we are presenting a program with a twist. Now, real people have been popping up as characters in fiction for quite a while. That's nothing new. But it isn't every day that said real person pops up in person in the company of the author. Well, that's what we have. Though exactly which Martha Nussbaum has joined us this evening, the celebrated professor of law and ethics at University of Chicago, and the author of more than 20 books, or Mark's invention, his take on Martha Nussbaum, the Martha of whom the besotted Alan thinks, I've got to have her. That's not clear. Nor is it clear to me if the professors, Nussbaum, are identical, or two faces of the same moon, or still more intriguingly, sort of matter and antimatter. The blast that would result from whose meeting would destroy, if not our universe, the universe of Golem Song, and maybe the Coop as well. So this evening we present you both a special guest star, like a TV variety show, and a metaphysical conundrum, one that only Professor Nussbaum herself, or perhaps Professor Nussbaum not herself, the mortal Martha or the meta Martha, or some collaboration between the two would be able to solve. I can't guarantee that you will get as big a bang out of Golem Song as I did, or as many bangs, 7 or 8 to the page, only that you will not find the fictional row Mark has chosen to hoe to exhaustion already by anyone else. Now, one review I read writes of Mark, quote, dragging, unquote, Professor Nussbaum into his story. She doesn't look particularly dragged, or even particularly drugged to me, nor even, in spite of the weather, particularly bedraggled either. Or maybe this is the Stockholm Syndrome we've all heard about. I guess we'll find out later. In any event, it's a treat to have Professor Nussbaum on furlough from her captivity in Chapter 13. Join us here in her own old stomping grounds, and to have Mark come down from Burlington for this truly stranger-than-fiction performance. Please join me in giving our guests a very warm welcome.
That was great. That was a wonderful introduction.
Hope we can equal the introduction. I should tell you a little bit about this book and how Martha and I both got here and why we're here. It actually started, I don't know if you know this, with a real and almost terrifying phone call that I got. And in fact, that's what started me writing. This was the first book I ever wrote, even though it's the third one out. I got a call from somebody in New York City who asked if I could send him from Vermont, where it's easy to get, a high-powered rifle with a telescopic sight. You don't get calls like this every day. So I said, okay, well, why? And he said, oh, I want to kill black people out my window. And so at this point, the only possible response is, why do you want to kill black people? Or hanging up, but I can hang up on him. I've known him for too long. And he said, oh, this is 1996. He said, oh, there's going to be a war between the blacks and the Jews in New York City. It's a Jewish guy, brilliant Jewish guy. And I want to take some with me. And any cops that would try to stop me. So, you know, I told him no, I wasn't going to do it, and that he was nuts, and he said, no, you're nuts. You're nuts. You don't understand reality. You live in goddamn beautiful Vermont with your goddamn beautiful wife, and, you know, and your goddamn beautiful children going to their goddamn beautiful school. That's not real. What's real is New York City in the subway at rush hour. That's reality. And, you know, we hung up and we haven't talked since, essentially. Now, without justifying the insanity of this request, I do want to, I think I brought it. I do want to show you something, which is, this is a Carl Rowan, recently died a couple of years ago. Was a syndicated black columnist. And this book came out in 1996. The Coming Race War in America, A Wake-Up Call. So the notion that things were really tense racially between blacks and Jews in New York City is not as insane at this time as the solution, right? Not to justify this phone call, but to explain it, kind of. Anyway, I had never written fiction. I had written, you know, political stuff and press releases. But this conversation was so strange that I wrote it down. And then I began to play with it. What would a character like this have to say about other things? Like, what have I heard this guy say, for instance, about women? And I wrote a chapter about what he had to say about women. And I wrote a chapter about what he had. And then all of a sudden, well, what about if he were a little bit different? And what if he were more like this guy, or you know? And this character grew from this kind of monomaniacal, negative nastiness of the origin of the book into what turned out to be, and what did I know? You know, I'm writing by the seat of my pants, essentially. An interesting challenge to the reader, because he's very smart, he's very funny, he's a laugh riot, you know, he's a joke a minute, and at the same time he's completely nuts and evil. And my wife, who has very little tolerance for male chauvinist pig racists, wound up liking him, which I thought was really interesting. So, here we have, not to give it away or anything, here we have a book about a very brilliant Jewish guy, a writer, a poet, a musician, full command of kind of the reference frame of Western literature and Eastern literature, developing over the course of the book this insane project. And the Golem part of it came later. This whole book was written without Golem in it, practically. And then Donna and I went to Prague, and part of Prague kitsch, you may know, there are two kitsch centers in Prague. One is Franz Kafka, and one is the Golem, right? And I thought, Golem, my God, that's it. That's what this book is about. It's about a guy who wants to be a golem. So I wrote the big penultimate chapter where Alan Krieger, which by the way means warrior in